What's up, Union Arena players? We're going to be talking none other than the biggest event that happened so far on the last round of basically right before solo leveling. Nah, just kidding. The Tokyo Ghoul's last round, basically, before we get Sakamoto Dags into the format. So, without further ado, let's break down the top 16 with some other fun decks that I might find interesting making the top 32. So let's take a look at those, shall we?
Please use the affiliate link down below. It costs you nothing to support the channel, and it's just a great way of doing it while you're checking out cards that you are always ready going to be paying for. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Now, the overall question is, with any format, are we in a healthy format or are we leading into a very toxic format? Is a lot of players' viewpoints. At the end of the day, we have a great variety right now. It's not overly ran by Kenshin. You know, Sunjin Woo is doing some work, the few decks. You know, we even have Tokyo Ghoul popping in. You know, Chichiro deck is showing up. Eva. You know, a lot of players were going to say, like, well, this format's going to go to shit. Well, it really didn't, to be honest with you. The format actually held up pretty decently. Yeah, we do have a little bit of high rate of Eva decks, but we do have Sunjin Woo and stuff like that. You know, this does make a lot of sense when it comes down to it. But, you know, we do have Sunjin Woo. We have two Chichiro lists. You know, Shu with Uta. Then you had, you know, Wally with, you know, Spear. You had none other than Toto Swap. Now you do have none other than Tokyo Ghoul. Yeah, and this one's very interesting. Same with Kenshin, Yellow Eva, Saito, Yellow Eva, Red Eva. This is Sunjin Woo. We actually had Arma taking a 14th slot. This, again, is a pilot depender. You know, same thing with these ones. But all in all, you get, like, we had this. Like, who had this? The Shishiro deck. Like, really hitting top 18. You know, you got Sunjin Woo. You have Evangelion. We kind of knew this was going to happen, right? Toshi pushing in some work. Like, a lot of good decks coming into the fray that we weren't fully expecting right away, right? So, yeah, let's take a look here. First place was Sunjin Woo. Again, a lot of people weren't expecting this deck to do extremely well. Again, this was very written off in the beginning, right? Not a lot of players were able to get this deck to work how they wanted, but then once they started realizing it's just a different way of playing Saito, this deck started popping off. It also hits higher numbers because, A, once you part in Monarch's Domain, and then you combo it in with a Sunjin Woo raid turn, this thing now leads into bigger numbers that your opponent can't block consistently. Again, a lot of the game plan becomes down to blocking properly, right? Your little guys that can trade in and be fine and don't really care lead into this shenanigans here. You know, Iron putting in some aggression, Kaizel and Tusk being able to give you value when your Shadow Soldiers swing in. Igris slamming down the Shadow Soldiers, ready to apply pressure. And again, Shadow Monarch is such a powerful option for this deck that, again, it's such an abusable card. You can either choose to play your Igris, which will play a Shadow Soldier, which leads into allowing you to do those trades, or you can just play up to 2 characters with 3 or less energy requirements, Shadow Armor Affiliate from your sideline, set it to resting on your field. You know, very comfortably you can do that with Kaizel and Tusk. And yeah, just really solid. And again, he went 12 zeros and he made this be his 13th zero. Now, we did get the Chichiro deck. Again, a lot of players are not a huge fan of this deck, but completely understandable. But deck is very powerful. Double attack is really strong. Being able to retire one of your opponents when attacking is really solid as well. You know, just a lot of good stuff going in the right direction for this deck. And players just have to adapt and build into it, right? Again, this is where I kind of been always saying that this is a deck that is better than Kenshin. It just has better removal. just pushing stuff into the energy line allows the players to kind of just manipulate the zones, where this deck will at least guarantee they go into the trash. Now, we do have another one, and again, very powerful deck. This really interesting here. Hinamo is really interesting. Look at the top 4 card, place up to 1 card from the top onto the top of the deck, place the rating cards at the bottom of the deck in any order. You know, Shu just putting in the work with the Utas. Again, this deck just applies a lot of damage. They're not playing the 12 drop, which is very surprising to me, but again, this is very much reminiscing of none other than our good friend Pro-DM Joey. So his list kind of similar to this, right? Now, Eva hasn't really changed much. You know, production model 8 plus, you know, Spear is just really solid. You know, their options are just all over the place because their Gaiuses are limited, but, you know, they have access to these really powerful removals still, so it doesn't really matter to them. This is a very interesting list. We haven't really seen this list ever really pop up. You got the Utas, you got the Ken Kanekis, you have the 7-drop Ken Kaneki, you have the 5-drop Ken Kaneki, you know, you got the starter deck Toka, just double attack, right? Switch one character with Ken Kaneki with 4 or less energy requirement on your front line to resting. If you do, this character gains double attack, you know, and impact until the end of turn. So just a really powerful game closer because double attack. If this is its character's second attack, it gains impact 1. So, you know, getting those final attacks in, swing in, and then having that extra impact is really good. Just having nullify impact on Ken. But yeah, you know, this one just applies pressure this way. Now, Red Kenshin's no surprise here. We always see this deck pop in. I expect her to kind of phase out, but yeah, Kenshin just applies pressure as always. Now, we do have Yellow Eva. Just puts in the work. Just deck's super aggressive. And again, if you can see the Misato, you're really in a good spot. But yeah, like 2 drops, just put in that defensive line that makes you really ready to block certain attacks and everything like that. Now, we do got Saito putting in some work. A lot of players really do enjoy Saito decks. So yeah, again, similar to the same strategy it has always had, it's still a really good deck. Yellow is just yellow. Just the aggression, being able to play things. Yeah. Red, you know, getting into the big type 0 pseudo DMS phase is the end goal. You have great synergy with type 0s, just being able to put in pressure at all times. So yeah, I mean, the deck's not going anywhere, and it's a very pilot dependent, right? It started coming down because a lot of decks are starting to able to counteract this deck very comfortably without a lot of work. Now, again, we're at this list here for very similar in the strategy, right? Only 1 iron, which I don't know if I feel comfortable enough on that. But at Kaisel F4 and 4 tusks, I can see it, right? But to be honest with you, 12 zeros is kind of where you want to be at anyway. So really solid there. Now, again, the Kisho Arma basically during this character's first attack during turn gains double damage. And at the end of this character's attack, you may, if one of your opponent's character has been sidelined this turn, switch this character to active, draw a card. So at least he can get in 2 attacks. Maybe apply 3 damage, if not other reasons. When this character gains, your opponent cannot choose this character with abilities unless they place 1 card from their hand to the sideline as an additional cost until the start of turn. So yeah, got some decent little bit of protection. So yeah, a lot of deck building here and deck choices, right? Juzo's really solid. I have no qualms with this deck. I think this has a lot of potential for being a really strong deck into the format, and we'll have to see how it'll handle Sakamoto days, right? You know, Chichiro we've already seen and understand. You know, Kenshin we've already seen. Now, again, 17th Milwoo. So yeah, this one hasn't been doing as hot as its predecessor running this deck. I think it got a really good surprise factor going into the tournament, but now that people have a good understanding of what to do against this deck, plus everyone's on Shadow Army now, it makes a lot of sense. Now, again, this one, just being able to derate and then slam down for shenanigans, very interesting. I would not have expected it to do this well, but making top 18 is nothing to scoff at, to be honest with you. Now, Toshiro, we've already seen Toshi do what Toshi does. Being able to stun the energy line means they don't get an extra push up, kind of get those win games in. Kenpachi's still a threat and a half by himself. Really interesting on the 2-2 special split, but that's not terrible. Now, we're back at Hajime Saito as well, but all in all, guys, what do you think of this format? And what do you think what's going to happen with the Sakamoto days? I do want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Stay safe, stay healthy. Don't catch you next one. Peace.